So the other day I saw Glenn from Glenn and Friends do a recipe from one of his old cookbooks that was called smothered chicken. It looked really interesting, but he mentioned that, to make it your own, as he always says, you might want to cook the chicken in some chicken stock or some wine. So that perked up my ears. It sounded really tasty, so that's what I'm making today. So I've got a large saute pan here that's big enough to hold as much chicken as we want. And I'm gonna go ahead and slice up a red onion and lay those on the bottom of the pan. And this will create a buffer between the chicken and the bottom of the pan so it doesn't get stuck while it's cooking. And Glenn used chicken thighs for this, which was probably the right move because in a braise like this, chicken breast does tend to get dried out, whereas thighs, you can cook them endlessly. They never really overcook, but regardless, I wanted to try this with a spatchcock chicken. So I'm removing all the extra guts from the chicken. I'm gonna press firmly down so it lays a little bit flatter. Then with some kitchen shears, I'll cut out the spine. And definitely set that aside for some stock later on. Now I'll flip that over, press it down a little bit firmer, so everything's kind of the same thickness. Then I'll go ahead and place that on top of those onions. Next, I want a few cloves of chopped garlic. No need to go too fine here. It's going to cook for a while, so it doesn't really matter if you get a big bite of garlic in the end of this. And really, I probably should have put this down with the onions as well, but I'm just sprinkling it on top of the chicken. Doesn't matter too much. I'll season this with some pepper. And some salt. And I was going to put some poultry seasoning on this, which you could totally do, but my buddy Andong sent me over this salts. I think that's how you pronounce it. Correct me if I'm wrong. Which is basically a poultry seasoning. I gotta ask him what the significance of this is, but it's basically got all the ingredients that I was gonna add to this anyway in one shaker bottle. Now this does actually have some salt in it. It is a complete seasoning essentially, so I probably should not have salted the chicken first, but that's all right because it's gonna be cooking for a while and that'll probably mellow out a little bit. Next I'm gonna add just a little bit of rosemary and some crushed red pepper, aka chili flakes, as well as 125 grams or 1 East Coast stick of butter, which I just learned on Half Is Interesting is a divide down the US. We have 2 different size sticks of butter, which is very interesting, seems arbitrary and unnecessary, but it also explains why Trader Joe's has those strange, short, stubby sticks of butter. Next I'll add 250 mils or about a cup of white wine. I'll turn that on to medium heat until the butter melts and the wine starts boiling. Then I'll cover that up and I'll let that go for about 20 minutes or until the wine is reduced. And you want to keep an eye on this because as you can see with the first chicken that I tried this on, yes, I did this multiple times. First of all, I cooked this one for way too long, so it fell apart. But second of all, you will see that giant black spot of caramelized onion on the chicken breast, which was not all that appetizing, definitely edible, definitely peel offable. But I recommend that you take it easy and keep an eye on it. Test the chicken's temperature as more of an indication. And then remove the chicken maybe before the wine is fully reduced and reduce the sauce on its own. I also scooped out the onions so that they didn't have a chance to caramelize. And once the windings are reduced and I was left with basically butter and schmaltz, I added the chicken back in, skin side down, gave it a good fry for a few minutes, and removed that chicken off to the side. Now again, it did kind of fall apart, but not as badly as before. And now at this point, we're going to turn this into a pan sauce. So add a tablespoon of flour. Stir around for a minute so it incorporates. You don't want to add more than this. You don't want this to become a roux. You just want that for thickening. And then on top of that, we're going to add a cup or 250 mils of milk. Stir that around, scrape all the good bits off the bottom of the pan. And you can pour that into a vessel until we're ready to serve. And I wanted a quick vegetable with this, so I sauteed some spinach and some butter with garlic. And I'll plate up the chicken on top of that.
She approves of the cuisine. She approves of the cuisine. Good.
And this is called smothered chicken for a reason, so let's smother this with some of that gravy. And this is honestly a really good, simple, classic kind of dish. I mean, it does come from an old cookbook, so that makes sense. It's been a while since I've had chicken with gravy. I think there's something really nice that braising the chicken in wine brings to this. Definitely adds some acidity to the flavor, which then is balanced out by that buttery, creamy gravy. Definitely feels like something that would be served up at a family dinner table with a gravy boat of that delicious sauce and some mashed potatoes for good measure.